Inigo Muniz, he's done it again. Oh, what a lovely goal. And I'm delighted for Sasha Lukic. It's his first goal for the club and he'll love that. The Hammersmith enders are on their feet. It's Muniz again. Fulham are 3-0 ahead.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. We are back again. It's the international break. No games to talk about, but we're going to dive deep into this Fulham squad. As the title says, should they stay or should they go? This is part one of two. A look at the Fulham squad as it currently stands. And the four of us on the podcast are all going to talk it all through, work out who we would like to stay, who we would like to potentially move on at the end of the season, and probably not come to a consensus at the end of it, let's be perfectly honest. But let's crack straight into it. Joining us tonight, we have Sammy. How are we going?
I'm going really, really good. I know there was some speculation about where I was. Some people said it was abdominal surgery. Some people said it was I just had some plastic surgery. I want everyone to know that me and Prince William, we're still great. We're still good. And I'm extremely, extremely happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I've missed this. I missed my family.
Sure. Dad, how are we going tonight?
Yeah, I'm here to say that surgery was easy. I feel great, and I'm happy to be back. I'm still kind of thinking and dreaming and daydreaming about what happened last Saturday. Watched it a couple of times, watched the highlights, and I'm not letting that go easily.
Fair enough. Nor should you as well. It's best performance of the season and nice way to go into the international break. Finally joining us, we have Skibby. How are we going, Skibby?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm kind of, surgery thing's gone way over my head, so I don't know this private joke. But personally, I'm all good. It's nice being relaxed going into a weekend and not knowing that, my world could go crushing down on a Saturday afternoon. But so it's quite nice to have that kind of relaxing feel. So I'm good.
It's true. And, the one thing I'd say at the moment is after a couple of good results, I think I looked at the form table over the last 10 games. Fulham are 6th in the form table, so flying high at the moment. We've got Sheffield United to come, Nottingham Forest to come, games that we should potentially be taking maximum points out of, pushing up the table. Life's good at the moment. And it's nice to go into an international break and actually feel like you want more football off the other side of it. So,
absolutely.
Guys, what we're going to do today is, like I said at the top, have a bit of a chat about the Fulham squad. We're going to go through from keepers all the way through to the strikers. We're going to look at the squad as it stands, their contract expiry dates. We're also going to dive a little bit into some of the youth players at Fulham and see where they might fit in next season, and basically pretend in our heads that we are Marco Silva, maybe Tony Khan as well, and work out who we feel should be staying at the end of the season and into next season, and who we should potentially be cashing in on, letting their contract expire, selling at the right price, and hopefully come up with an idea of a squad at the end of it. Let's basically crack straight into it. We're going to start off by talking about the goalkeeper situation. So, as we can see here, we've got 3 keepers at the moment. Bernd Leno, obviously the starter, contracted through to 2027. Bender recently signed, contracted through to 2026. Marek Rodak, his contract is up at the end of this season. And then a couple of youth keepers as well, Ashby Hammond, Wicken and Borto. Ashby Hammond and Wicken's both out on loan this season, doing really good things as well. I think Borto's on loan this season as well, potentially. But look, it's probably the easiest conversation to have. I don't think this is an area we really feel like we need to strengthen. But Skibby, I'll throw to you first. The big question here, I guess, is around Marek Rodak. He's been at the club a very long time. Where do you see his future?
Very sadly, not at Fulham. And I think it's more of a positive thing than a negative. He's got Leno ahead of him, which we all know is a phenomenal goalkeeper. He's been probably one of the top performers in the league this year. But we know that Rodak can be a very, very good goalkeeper on his day, potentially that top level championship. And I think even a lower, Premier League team could benefit from having him between the sticks. And he's getting to that age now, 27, where you start to kind of really cement your place as that number one, and that goes into sort of your mid-30s. And I think for Rodak, it's been an amazing time, but I think it's come to an end, but mainly for his development rather than, I think it would be too selfish for us to keep him as number two. He deserves better than being a number two, I think.
Guys, feel free to just jump in. I won't won't be too tight on everyone. Go for
well, if I can say, look, I feel sorry for the guy. He's a good enough keeper, international level keeper in his own right, and he's been a wonderful servant from the club, and by all accounts, a really, really well liked member of the squad, or the greater squad, and it's a really difficult thing. It's like being a wicketkeeper, and if you live in the wrong generation, life can be tough, and it's really difficult being a backup keeper, isn't it? No matter what the side agreement you have with the manager to play cup games. I suppose it's a little different if you have a European roster, and so you're getting a lot more games and there has to be rotation, but that's not where we're at. And it's just difficult to see a world where he stays for his own career. I mean, he's not super young, but he's not old by keeper standards by any means. So he could absolutely, be of great value to someone else, somewhere else. And I wish him all the best if he does go. We're kind of talking like he's going to go. It's difficult to believe that he's going to stay.
Yeah, like Rodak for me has always been a bit of a weird one. It's a little bit. You can't even necessarily say it's a little bit always the bridesmaid, never the bride, because he has had pretty much full seasons in the championship, and he has had some shining moments. But he bless him, he was just never destined to be that guy. And if he was ever going to be that, we really would have known right now. I feel that we have given him a really serious chance to develop and to grow into it. And it just wasn't to be, and that's okay. That's okay. And he would want to be playing first team football. I think it would genuinely be the kindest thing to do, sounding like he's like an old dog or something like that. But it would probably be the kindest thing to do to let him go on and at least just be the first name on the sheet for another team. It's sad because I just don't think he's a Premier League player, and that's by no means a diss because it's the most competitive league in the entire world. But that still doesn't mean he can't have like an awesome career in, I don't know, maybe lower league Spanish side or the Turkish league. Like he can go somewhere and actually make a name for himself, and he'll always be remembered fondly here. And then it gives Bender an opportunity to actually find his way in, and I want to see that.
But is it not also the case that he's got an unfortunate dynamic in that Leno is, he's so good. He's very, very, very good. And so there's a very big gap between him and Rodak for me. And it's not like he's shadowing a young, talented, but inconsistent and somewhat accident-prone keeper who's come from another league and is still finding his way in the Premier League. And so Rodak is called upon for or needed to provide that kind of experience in this competition. It's just not that at all. And I think it's absolutely, in my mind, the time for someone like Bender or maybe someone else who's young, is prepared to be the bridesmaid behind someone like Leno and not be frustrated by that, and still have a lot of sort of miles on the clock and not be frustrated that his sort of career opportunities are wasting away, and happy to learn. Because, goalkeepers have long careers. So if they're patient, it's nothing for them to spend 2 or 3 years as an understudy in a great environment, learning from a really top team and understanding, someone who can teach them an awful lot. And I just don't think that's where Rodak's at.
Yeah.
And I think the telling signs were, the time we were in the Premier League before we got relegated, Rodak got us up, and then Alphonse Areola comes in, and he's the number 2 again, and it's almost like we always think about. And I know I probably was one of those guilty parties where we're thinking, oh, Marek was amazing in promotion seasons, but he deserves that chance. But then when you sort of bring in keepers like Areola and Leno, who just show the gulf of class in terms of, Marco wants to play in a certain way, which a lot of Premier League teams do, which is, playing out from the back with your feet, being that kind of composed on the ball, but also being able to distribute like much cleaner. I feel like you just didn't really get that with Rodak, and I don't think you get that with a lot of keepers. You have to go for those world-class keepers, which allow you to have that kind of ability to sort of break down teams, and it works really well when it works. And it's just a shame that you do sort of take a step back and go, what, Leno, Areola, world class. Rodak probably doesn't hit that, which is probably why a championship, or actually going abroad. I didn't even think of that, but Sammy made a great point. Going to sort of those less intense leagues where sort of Turkey, maybe sort of a Bundesliga team, who isn't one of the top 3, it could potentially work really well for him. But I think it's just one of those where it's unfortunately written for him that we had great times, but I think it's time for both of us to move on for the best of our endeavors.
Sounds like you've written those lines before with some flowers in your hand there, Skibby.
So my little breakup book, that's all good. It's not you, it's me.
I think you need to check your mic there, Skibby, as well. It's just feeding back very fractionally. I do agree with you on Rodak. I think if you have a look at his appearances for Fulham, he's made 100 appearances in total for Fulham. The majority of those, though, have come in the Championship. He's basically just been our cup keeper for the last few years. And there is that gulf there, and a really good point by Skibby there when you look at the players he brought in at the standard of Areola, the standard of Leno. And again, no offense to Rodak, he's an international keeper. And maybe it is that he just needs to go to another club and be their number 1 and come in as their number 1. And I could totally see him being a Burnley number 1 or a Sheffield United number 1 or one of the teams at the top end of the Championship coming up. Like he'd slot in really nicely to Leicester or a Derby, one of those clubs. Maybe not Derby, they're in League One. But I feel like he's got a future ahead of him. He's only 27. He's probably got 10 years of football left in him. As much as you can learn from sitting behind someone like Leno on the bench, I think you've probably reached the point now where it's time to branch out and be the number 1 somewhere. And he's got to look at what his options are and find one that actually furthers his career, because he's probably in danger of stagnating at the moment.
Obviously,
I would have thought he's a year into that, actually, Jack.
Possibly.
Yeah, probably. Obviously, you keepers mature. They typically age quite well. Is there a possibility that at any point, if we let him go and say all the stars align and he can get sufficient game time, say for example in like Bundesliga and like the lower half of the table, is there do we ever realistically see him being an elite level keeper and then us kicking ourselves later down the track, or do you reckon he's just destined to be at that kind of 72 on FIFA kind of level?
Well, if you think about what Skibby said earlier, at that elite level, it does require skill, not necessarily only experience. And you have to have literally a defender stroke midfielder set of feet. And if you look at Leno, I mean, I know he's probably not rated the absolute highest, but I actually do rate him with his feet. I think he's very assured. And he's also got that kind of mindset where he does play that triangles game and draw players really well. And I always felt that Rodak, he doesn't have the confidence, or maybe just the self-assurance. He always looks like he's under enormous amount of pressure just to clear his lines when he's got the ball at his feet, and that's just another level. And if you look at all top athletes, it's always about that level of time they've got, whether they're cricketers, tennis players, receiving a serve at, crazy miles per hour, or footballers, they've got time. And he just doesn't seem to have that.
Do you reckon as well he's also been hindered by the fact that he's always been waiting to be the number one? So he's never necessarily learned as much from the keepers in front of him in the same way that a Bender probably would. Because a Bender would come in, look at Bert Lemmer and be like, I want to absorb everything that you're doing. I want to take everything that you're doing and just emulate you. Whereas Rodak potentially runs the risk of being like, Leno's taking my spot. I don't really want as much to do with him because this guy's in the way. And that would probably really hinder.
I think that's probably a fraction unfair on Rodak's personality, maybe. I don't think he would go... Goalkeepers are a very tight-knit unit, and I don't know if you've seen any of the goalkeeper podcasts. I know there's the keeper at Wrexham. He has a podcast, and...
Foster.
No, not Foster, the actual keeper at Wrexham, not the one who's brought in
his
for...
name.
I can't remember his name, but he talks about the fact that, he got dropped from that team, but they don't hold it against each other. They're a tight-knit unit. It's sort of like we talk about in cricket as well. There's the bowlers union, and all the bowlers are together, and they're kind of in competition to get overs. But at the end of the day, they're still a group. And I think keepers have that as well, a bit of a keepers union where you do everything you can to prepare the other keepers for game situations. Because at the end of the day, you want your team to win.
I'm not.
It's all about.
I don't fully buy that, Jack.
It's a bit of a different world, and there's an obvious pecking order when you're going for just one position as well. Rodak is never going to sit there and expect to be number one because he knows his place, and we can see here Leno's 1, Rodak's 2, Bender's 3.
But the wicket keeper. Hang on, the wicket keeper analogy is a better one because there is only one in the team.
Sure.
Bowlers, the bowling group in a cricket team is definitely a thing, but they're all getting a game. They're all getting a.
What I'm saying though, the keepers, the goalkeepers talk about a keepers union and the fact that they stick close together and they sort of lift each other up even when one's been dropped for the other. There's no bottom lips. There's no egos with goalkeepers. Let's be perfectly honest here. There's egos with midfielders and strikers. There's not with goalkeepers. You can't have an ego as a goalkeeper because you make a mistake and that falls to pieces instantly because you go 1 goal down. At the start of the season, all these keepers know their position. They know that Leno's 1, Rodak's 2, Bender's 3. Rodak signs new contracts. He's been at Fulham for 10 years. He signs a new contract every couple of seasons, knowing that he's going to be the number 2 keeper. When we go down to the Championship, he's told that he's the number 1 and he gets to hold that spot. But you go up to the Premier League and go, Marek, we've signed Bernd Leno, you're number 2. All you can do then is work hard to get to that number 1 spot.
So what you're saying is when they're sifting through CVs to hire keepers, the most important thing on his CV is must love training.
Well, I mean, an important and a tough thing about goalkeepers when you try and sign a reserve goalkeeper. I mean, we signed Stephen Bender in the summer. He's come to Fulham knowing that he is not getting a game.
But I think we've been talking around that. It's a different thing, though, isn't it? He's a young guy.
Rodak would go into this season knowing he's not getting a game. That's what I mean. It's very set in stone before the season starts. And it takes a miracle for that to be turned around where Bernd Leno gets a crazy injury, Rodak has this amazing run of form and doesn't get dropped until he makes an error, basically. But really, that's an anomaly. I think here it's pretty clear that Rodak needs to move on. Bender will be the number 2, and then it's up to Fulham to decide if they're going to bring in a new keeper to be number 3, which you might sometimes do. You see often, Mark Schwarzer got taken to Chelsea as a number 3 at 40 years old. Maybe there's an old keeper who can be an old head around the club and basically be a coach. Or you look at promoting one of these youth keepers. And I want to touch on these keepers a little bit. Luke Ashby-Hammond is out on loan at the moment. He's playing in League Two for Notts County. Made 12 appearances, conceded 21 goals. He's got one clean sheet. He actually got 2 assists on the weekend as well. But he's been, doing very well. He's been at the club for a very long time. His contract expires 2025. George Wickens was in the news a little bit recently. He had a great game against Celtic where they won 1-0, but I think he faced something stupid like 40 shots on goal and made the most saves.
He's playing Sunday League.
He's playing against Celtic. He's playing in the Premier League. He's playing for Ross County. But yeah, I think he made the most saves any keeper's ever made in the Scottish Premier League in that game. And one man of the match and was touted as being a future star, basically. He's played 11 games, conceded 22 goals. There's a bit of talent here. And Ashby-Hammond and Wickens have been at Fulham for a very long time. Skibby, I'll throw to you first. Do you think there's any possibility of these guys becoming the third goalkeeper, or do you think at their age it makes more sense for them to go out on loan and get some more first-team experience?
I think definitely some more first-team experience. I've got some insider stuff around Ashby-Hammond. So
Scandal.
My family, not quite, but my family on my father's side is all Crawley Town. So he was actually on loan there. And I said to them, he seems like a really safe pair of hands, no pun intended, but like, he is a decent keeper. And they kind of started him a few games, I think. And then the current keeper, Adai, basically cemented that spot. And for me, Adai, he's never going to listen to this, so I don't know why I'm hesitating, but he's not a very good goalkeeper. He is very much, it just everything about him is so erratic, and it's just everything wrong about a goalkeeper is basically Adai. But the fact that it says to me that Ashby-Hammond couldn't, cement his space, and for some reason Adai was preferred, does raise some red flags for me. And I think now he got recalled, I think, and then sent back out to Notts County, as you said. He doesn't seem to be having a great season in terms of cementing that spot or filling everyone with confidence. Where George Wickens, is my mic still really bad?
Oh, just power through. Just power through.
Apologies. Well, apologies everyone, but I'll work it out in a minute. But whereas George Wickens, like you said, he's had this really great time with Ross County, so it's hard for me to sort of say Ashby-Hammond is going to be that guy. If I had to pick one of the two, I think Wickens is the one who is showing more promise and potential to sort of come into the first team squad, I think. But Ashby-Hammond, if not, it's by his contract going out in 2025, it's kind of his make or break next year. Going out on loan, I reckon, to see if he can show that he is that person to sort of step up and be sort of the core 3 goalkeepers.
I'd like to keep Ashby-Hammond and Wickens out on loan. I'm pretty cemented in Rodak's leaving, or we're just gonna lovingly part ways with them and just do a nice wave for them going off in the distance. I think it would be very, very short-sighted to think that Leno and Bender and potentially calling up one of the youth guys would be sufficient. In my opinion, we would have to sign someone else. Because I love Bert Leno. He is the wall that we've been craving for basically since Areola left. But like how old is Bert Leno? Like 32, 31, 33-ish. And when Bert Leno inevitably does leave, or potentially around about the 2027, I'm not entirely convinced that Bender will be a sufficient replacement. So I think we should probably get somebody in with the foresight that they would give Leno a serious run for their money. And there's plenty of keepers in the Premier League that are of that quality who aren't getting enough game time. So I've got a lot of confidence that we'd be able to find somebody.
Oh, you mean come to Fulham where you won't get game time? I don't think that's your calling card. But let's talk about Bender, because I think we've convinced ourselves that Rodak probably his future is probably elsewhere. I know of Bender. I know that he came. He was well thought of when he came, but I don't know a lot about him. And I couldn't tell you 4 things about his game. Jack or Skibby, tell me about him.
I can tell you.
I mean, he's been at Swansea. He started at Swansea. He had a bad knee injury last season, I think in January, about a year ago. So he's been recovering from that. We kind of signed him while he was still recovering. Played 27 games for Swansea, played 25 games on loan at Swindon. And most of his games came last season at Swansea. So he's still very fresh, but it's kind of good when you get a keeper who is, I say young, he is 25, but he's got at least some championship experience behind him already. He's kind of probably, in terms of experience, he's not miles behind Rodak. So you kind of look at it and go, you're picking up someone a little bit younger, someone who's probably happier to be your number 2 and sit in that position. And when he signed, I don't know if you watched his initial interviews, but he was so keen to learn from Bernd Leno. Interestingly, they're both from the same small town, I think, in Germany. And he was just like over the moon, said Leno was one of his idols when he was coming up through the ranks as a goalkeeper. And it just seems like a perfect fit. If anything, I agree. I'd say Ashby, Hammond and Wickens out on loan again next season. I think Wickens will definitely be sought after, possibly in the Championship, probably in League One. Oh, no, probably the Championship after a year in doing well in the Scottish Premier League. And then I'd say someone like Alex Borto is probably the person who you then promote to the first team as your third goalkeeper, but doesn't make the bench most weeks and maybe is on the bench for the Euro Cup games when Bender plays. But he's been having a good season in the Premier League 2, which is the under-21s competition. He's played 7 games this year. Not 7 games this year. He's had a good year so far, though. 7 games, conceded 13 goals. The majority of those actually came in the EFL Trophy against teams playing in League One. He's kept a couple of clean sheets this year. I think he's probably looking like someone who has potential to go further. He has got a couple of under-20s caps for the US. And look, I think there's some potential there, and it seems like the kind of person who you bring in as a third goalkeeper just to plug the gap more than anything.
Sorry, Sam. So are you saying, Jack, in your world, Bender becomes number 2?
Yeah.
I think, and it's probably because I actually remember the interview that Jack's referring to, and that's a really, really big selling point for me about Bender, because for somebody to come in and be so upfront about how much they idolize Bernd Leno and so committed to basically taking in everything that Bernd Leno has to offer for him. And I find it impossible to believe that Bernd Leno wouldn't take a dude who's from the exact same place as him in Germany under his wing. And there's going to be a connection there. Like, I know you can't really quantify that, but it just makes sense. And I see that as a massive, massive positive.
Yeah. No. So I think this is probably going to be the easiest one. We're all in consensus that Leno, Bender stay. Rodak probably goes for his own career progression. And then we're looking at loans for the youth keepers and maybe keeping one of them as a third keeper backup option. Pretty happy with that?
Happy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wonderful. That was the easiest one we're going to have so far. We're going to jump across.
At this rate, it's 4 episodes, Jack. But carry on.
Well, lucky I call this part 1 and not part 1 of 2 because it could easily go for that long. Now, I'll ask you guys: would you prefer to talk about defenders and just move up the pitch, or talk about the midfield?
Don't mind.
I reckon the midfield. Well, I'll probably be here till like 3 a.m. So I'm probably leaning ever so slightly towards defenders, but I'm happy to do whatever you guys want.
Seems the right way to go. Defenders next.
Let's chat defenders. And I think there's some interesting calls in here because there's some contracts up at the end of the season and there's some real talented youth players as well who can potentially step up. Just to run through the squad as it stands, contracts expiring at the end of the season, currently Kenny Tete and Tosin. Tim Ream and Mbabu are through to 2025. Castagna, Diop and Bassi are all through to 2027, and Anthony Robinson signed a new contract this season, I think, through to 2028. We've got a couple of youth players that we've highlighted here in Luke de Fougerolles and Devon Tanton, who've both made first-team appearances this season. Both of their contracts expiring in 2025. They're just on youth contracts still, or their first professional contracts, I believe. So not long-term deals at this stage. I guess let's start with the expiring contracts, and it's a couple of interesting points because, you know, we had Kish from Cottage Tactico on, and he was talking about how the one player he was, I guess, the most worried about losing in the summer was Tosin. And then we've also got Kenny Tete, who, you know, was initially our starting right back and has been displaced by Castagna. Dad, I'll throw to you first here. Let's talk about Tosin. Where do we see the future lying here? Do you think we keep pushing and try and get Tosin signed up to a new contract, or do you think it's a bit of a lost cause at this point?
Oh, who knows? It looks like a lost cause. It looks, I mean, he repeatedly has failed to agree a contract. Who knows what really goes on, whether he flatly refuses through his agent to even engage, or whether he's open to it and we just don't meet his terms, whether he wants a longer term contract. Who knows? I don't know the detail. But certainly if you go back to, you know, the first half of the season, last half of 2023, it absolutely looked like he was heading out the door. And to his credit, if that is true, he has come back and done a very, very good job for us and been part of a resurgence in the success of this team this season. How far do we chase it? There may be no amount of salary increase that satisfies what Tosin is after. By all accounts, he's looking for, you know, a bigger challenge and Champions League football, or maybe just playing at a high level even within the Premier League. My gut feeling about Tosin, and you know, I've been pretty vocal about Tosin over the years. Kind of have a love-hate relationship with the guy. I recognize absolutely what he brings, and on his day, he's great. He's excellent. He's often the magic that you know, creates a winning situation for us. I do feel like he's become a little less accident prone. I'm not entirely sure why that is. If he's just,
that doesn't sound like you when you're normally talking to me on a Saturday night watching the game.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I've said it. Well, it's because I think he takes some incredibly high risk options, and when they come off, they are Hollywood, but they often result in a turnover, which it just fills me with dread. But he seems to be getting better at, I guess, just minimizing those quite serious.
Maybe
mistakes.
That's kind of part of it, though, is the fact that when we watch the game together and you're oohing and ahhing when he puts passes through the middle or down the wings, but actually 99 times out of 100 at the moment, those passes are hitting their target. And yes, there are occasional errors, but you ooh and ah because of the Tosin that we've seen over the last 4 years or so. But actually, he has improved his passing game, and he doesn't actually have as many errors as he potentially had previously.
My thing with Tosin, right, is I feel that we're still yet to have a really, really honest conversation with him, because he's kind of giving us like politician responses to a lot of this stuff at the moment, and it's all speculation. I don't know what he actually wants, because I understand that he wants to go on and maybe play like European football or whatever, but at the moment, he's currently starting in a Premier League squad that, if we play our cards right, has a serious opportunity to potentially look at European football for the first time in a very, very long time. He is on the precipice of a really, really, really good thing, and he still doesn't want to be with us. I don't necessarily know, and frankly, and I don't really mean it with like malice, but I think we could probably get a fair compensation for him. If he wants to leave, that's his prerogative. But I don't really get why, because his reasoning doesn't really match up with what he's actually getting, and especially with his recent partnership with Bassi, he's really, really cemented himself. So it doesn't really make sense. I'm not really like angry about it, upset about it. I'm just a bit confused.
Yeah, it is fractionally confusing, I guess, but at the same time, I think it's quite simple. Tosin believes he is able to play at a higher level, and he maybe wants more money on top of that as well. And with his contract running out, he's making a decision to not renew his contract and see what options he's got available. Maybe it's a power play to get a little bit more money through the door. Maybe it's just because he thinks he's better than Fulham. Either way, he's made it quite clear over the last couple of seasons that he wants to move on. There was an article, I think it came out today potentially, or maybe yesterday, saying that Fulham were looking at making Tosin one of their highest earners. I'd be very interested if he then doesn't accept a contract offer from us. It's obvious that he's got he wants to play at a higher level, and that for me is totally understandable. If you want to chance your arm and become a free agent and hope that a higher up club takes a chance on you, then go for gold. It's a shame we can't cash in on him. I think it would have been really good to get something for him. But at the end of the day, I don't think we should be fighting too hard for him. As big a loss as he would be, I feel like you kind of have to just go, yeah, okay, he's not staying with us. There's not much we can do. Let's put our efforts into actually finding someone who wants to be with us.
I think there's also an element of when he started all this contract talk and wanting to leave, and well, he never said he wanted to leave, but there was a lot of talk about him leaving for a free. He wasn't really in the fold. You had Ream, Diop kind of had that kind of cemented partnership at the time, and Tosin, there was points where he was injured, coming back in, and was always kind of on the bench. And I can see that he was disgruntled. He wasn't playing, and he's thinking, you know what, I could do better. But I think that could have changed, and potentially conversations with Marco, and then now this strong run in the team. I think we actually might see a U-turn. Personally, I think, especially when they're saying it, like you said, Jack, he might be one of the top earners at the club with a new contract. But I think there's a player there, and I think it's a bit of the point of that Marco can see this kind of quality. We've seen it in Muniz, where there's a bit of a raw talent, but not so much defined. He makes some silly mistakes, but I think you get these high risk, high reward type deals with these sort of players, where he's kind of trying to nip in, get the interception, and get us on the counter attack. And I think that does have a high risk along with it, which potentially people misinterpret as silly mistakes. But I think if we can cement him, then Tosin would be probably one of the main keeps, I would say, as a defender for us going forward and pushing up the table.
We've discussed it. I kind of want to get an idea of how everyone's thinking then. So starting from the top, as I see it on my screen, Sammy, Tosin, keep or let go?
If I'm managing, keep. But yeah, if he goes, that's what he wants to do.
Dad,
How do you
keep
feel
or
on the
let go?
fence there, Sam?
Yeah. No. What I want him to stay. I
Sure
want him
are
to stay,
sitting on
but
the
he's
fence there.
no. I just want him to stay, but he's just not going to fucking do it because like it's is he just got like is it a pride thing? Is it literally just kind of like I've said I'm leaving and now I have to leave? Is that literally what it is? Because it's just silly. It's really silly in my opinion.
Yeah. The part I don't understand, apart from the fact that my sound dropped out for about 4 minutes and I didn't hear what anyone said, so I really don't understand a lot. But the part I don't understand is whether he just seems petulant or he's actually toxic and not a team player. There, I said it. And
That's a fair
so
point.
and I'm telling you now, if he's toxic, he's out. Marco Silva will not want him there. He's smarter than that. And sure, if it's just money, I think that can be solved. If he has ambitions and thinks Fulham's not good enough for him, there's no way Silva would keep him. I just don't believe it.
But to combat that, would if he was toxic and just a bad cloud amongst all the dressing room, Diop's not making the bench right now because he's in. Would he not play Diop or instead of Tosin and just be like, well, you're not part of our plans because you don't want to be here, so off you go. You can go train by yourself.
Pre-season, wasn't there footage when we were in the US of Tosin and Mitro doing laps around the outside of the pitch?
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
But then does that mean that something's changed?
But I think
I assume so.
But Mark is also quite single-minded about the fact that what we're really here for is, and until someone tells me differently, that you're out the door, is to get as high as we can. So if you're telling me you're available, get in there and do a job. And if you don't and you've got a long lip, I'm sure you wouldn't even make the team sheet. So I think it's all a bit schizophrenic, really. And it's the part I'm confused by is that if I'm looking at what I see on TV, he looks like there's an attitude problem there. It just does. But if it's just money, that could be solved.
Yeah.
If he's happy to stay and he's happy to be part of Fulham and we give him more money because that's what he wants, I'm happy to keep him.
Yeah. There's always going to be a pinch of salt, Agents are weasels, they really are. We've seen it with Carvalho, we've seen it with the young players. Whether he's been in his ear and said, "Oh, you know what? Representatives from AC Milan have been on to me. All you got to do is just see out the rest of your contract, and your head's turned." I mean, AC Milan or Fulham, then the name even the name alone turns heads, doesn't it? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but yeah.
So, Dad, Tosin, stay, keep or kick?
Keep. If we can satisfy him financially, if that's what he wants, keep.
And Skibby, I'm hoping you're going to give me the nice short answer I was looking for. Keep or kick?
Well, it's funny. No, we'll keep him.
You really are part of the family now, Skibby.
I'm loving it. No, definitely for me, keep. I mean, he's just one of our top defenders, and he's still young. And I mean, look at Ream. He was always solid, and he didn't really come onto his own until sort of maybe his sort of late 20s, early 30s. So I think that's the real prime for defenders. So he's got a lot of growth to do. So I think definitely keep, just for that aspect of he can be a top defender.
We spent fucking 13 minutes on him, so he better stay now.
Well, now I get to talk about him. So, no, for me, Tosin's a keep. I would happily make him one of our highest earners as long as he signs a long-term deal. I want him to be 2028, 2029, like a 4 or 5 year deal, and really lock him down on a decent wage, but mean that if clubs want to come in for him and he does, he's not far off, I'd say, getting an England call-up. It's been spruiked in the media a fair bit. If he does all of a sudden become England's starting centre-back because he does push on to that next level because he's got a bit of security about what he's doing, maybe he's a 60 million, 70 million pound defender in a couple of years' time, and signing him on a contract and paying him 80, 90,000 a week was the best thing we could possibly do. Let's move on to the next defender that we need to talk about here, Kenny Tete. Now, his contract's up at the end of the season. He seems loved around the club, seems loved by the fans as well. But with Timothy Castagna's performances this season, how do we feel about Tete? Skibby, I'll start with you. Do you feel like Tete is worth putting the money into if we've got Castagna there as an option? And do you feel like Tete will be happy sitting on the bench as well?
Oh, it's a really tough one, this one, because I love Kenny Tete, and I think we saw against Chelsea probably one of the best fullback performances before Robinson against Spurs at the weekend. It was just relentless down that right-hand side. But I think if you asked me before we spoke to Kish, I'd have been like, yeah, I mean, he can still rival. But now he's sort of broken down the way that Marco likes to play, the way that he wants them to move the ball on that right-hand side. Kenny just doesn't quite fit the bill, which is a very sad thing. But I would love to keep him. I think he would be a fantastic backup, and I think he's a great person to have around the club and a great option off the bench. But personally, I can't see him staying if he's going to be a number 2, because he's shown the glimpses that he can be a top right back in this league. And I think even across Europe, he could be. Maybe he heads back to sort of France or that kind of, or Italy. But personally, as much as I would love him to stay, I can't see him staying to be a number 2 in a system that doesn't quite fit the flying up and down the wing, really high attacking. So for me, unfortunately, he's going to be one that will leave, but with great memories.
I actually thought I was going to be the only one with an unpopular opinion about it, but I actually echo Skibby here. I love him. He's been awesome for us since the day he got here. But the reality is really injury prone, and with the way in which he actually plays, this really, really high intensity, so like a really, really old school, strong, like really defensively minded. I just can't see that being sustainable in a way that's actually beneficial for us long term. I think Timothy Castagna can, and players in that vein, Timothy Castagna can probably keep that game up for maybe like the next 3 years with kind of ease. He's very, very glossy. He's nowhere near as intense as Kenny is, and it's the reasons why I love him. But I think if we're being really realistic, Kenny should be playing first team football in a side that needs him, deserves him, and I genuinely want that for him. And it also gives us an opportunity to explore other younger options. And yeah, I don't want to say thanks for the memories as such, because I genuinely think it's a little bit bittersweet than that. But I do think it might be time.
I think we've all seen some light in our last podcast, having Kish sort of lift the veil for us. And if it wasn't sort of obvious what was happening, I feel like we understand it pretty well. And it really feels like the way forward in Marco's squad and team is you need to be very, very good on the ball. And just being an athlete that bombs forward in an exciting flavor of football is, unless you're exceptional, like Anthony Robinson, who might not be the most skillful player at, as a full back, but he's exceptional in terms of, a couple of elements of his game. I think looking forward, those are the kind of players that Marco Silva will be surgically trying to import and build into this team. And so it doesn't doesn't actually look great for a guy who is clearly a massive crowd favourite. He's been an incredible servant over the last couple of years. I mean, he's a big part of why we did so well in that first year back in the Premier League, and had a storming season in the championships to get us up as well. And so I love the guy. I love his fight. I love his spirit. But it's difficult to see why, despite the fact that he offers something different, if you're in a phase of the game where you do need something different, I just think it's probably too much of a luxury, and I think Mark would probably rather have someone really competing for that right back position who's a similar style of player to Castagna, rather than having, a Kenny Tete. I hate to say it, but I think that's the truth.
Kish was like the marriage counselor that basically set the chain of events before the divorce, wasn't he? He's just it's like he just highlighted we're in different places, and that's okay,
With Kenny Tete, and it's kind of a commentary on Fulham's transfer dealings over the last 2 seasons, I'd say, or maybe 3 seasons. Kenny Tete was signed in 2020, so coming up for 4 years ago, for 3.2 million. Talk about Rodak as well previously, who was signed for a smaller amount. You look at someone like, we haven't spent huge amounts on transfer fees since the horrible season where we spent 100 million and went down. But then you look at this season and the signings we've made. Timothy Castagna, we signed him for, I think it was 15 million in total. Alex Iwobi signed for 22 million. It seems like Tete was signed at the time as a good deal. Same with Robinson. I think Robinson was picked up for 2 mil off Wigan, signed as a good deal at the time. And maybe to plug a gap at the time, and they're talented players who fit into what Marco kind of wants to do. But Marco's evolved since then, and we're now at a position where we can actually sign players who fit the way that we want to play a little bit better, and so we're able to spend money on those players. So Castagna's quite an obvious step up from Kenny Tete. I'd say Iwobi is like a big step up from Decordova-Reid, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I feel like that's the natural way that we are starting to see the squad evolve, and it does mean that someone like Kenny Tete probably does lose his position here and gets shifted on. The only thing that's probably standing in Tete's favour is when I look at that group of 8 defenders, Mbabu is obviously out on loan at the moment, but we don't have any other coverage out wide. Mm-hmm. Now, I know we got Ballatore on loan. He's not going to sign realistically, and we haven't seen much of him. But with Robinson and Castagna starting, if you lose Kenny Tete, realistically, I can't see us keeping Mbabu. I think he's got an option on his loan to be signed for quite a small fee as well. So then we'd go into the summer with your starting fullbacks, but no coverage on top of that. That would be the only reason I think we might try and keep Kenny Tete is for coverage, because having to sign 2 new players and bring them into a system and the quality of players that we want as well, you're looking at probably having to shift out 20 million, maybe more, across those 2 players, at least 10 mil each. So it's a big call, and all you need to do with Kenny Tete is give him a little bump in salary. I think he's on about 30, 40,000 a week, bump him up to 50 and sign him on a 1-2 year deal. And then all you need to do is maybe sign one other player on top of that, and you probably get away with it. Maybe bring someone in on loan and keep it even cheaper than that. Economically, and it sort of makes sense to keep Kenny Tete. Tactically and strategically, it makes sense to move him on. So this is one where I actually am sort of sitting on the fence. Not just the fact that I love Kenny Tete as a person and as a player, but I feel like if we got rid of Tete, we might be left a little bit bare at the back going into the summer. And we've seen what Fulham are like in the last couple of years. And if the Khans are potentially thinking about selling the club, they're not going to be investing a huge amount more money. Maybe it makes more sense to actually keep Kenny Tete, because we might only sign 2 or 3 players in the summer, and be left incredibly threadbare at the back.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I don't want to jump ahead, but I think personally, from what I saw from Diffuseros in sort of pre-season, and I think he played in the cup as well.
Yeah,
he just shows he is really calm on the ball, really good in tight spaces, and he's not your average kind of defender. He's very much, he almost plays like a kind of holding midfielder in a way that he's just very calm on the ball, really distributes it nicely. And to be honest, I can see a lot of him, being able to step into that Castagna role. You got tight spaces, bringing in the central midfielders and working up sort of the pitch that way. And I know we played him in centre back, but I think by trade he's actually a fullback.
I think he's a left back. Yeah,
but well, is he? I thought he was right footed. I might
be wrong.
No, he's right. He's a right back. He's a right back.
Yeah, I think he's a right back. So I can see him sort of moulding into that kind of Castagna role that the Marco likes and that we're using at the moment, which is kind of backing up the sort of the Tete conversation. But it depends on what they see, whether he's going to be more of a centre back or is he going to be that kind of ball playing fullback that we like. But that's personally where I can see it going. If I'm right, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But hey,
I think it probably depends on his growth as well. He looks like he has a potential to be quite tall. I think he's about 6 foot at the moment, but at 18, you could easily have a bit of a growth spurt and end up being 6'2", 6'3", filling out a bit and being. It reminds you of Breda Hanklin sometimes on the ball and aerially looks pretty strong as well. If he stays about the height that he is at the moment, maybe being a fullback does work better for him. Haven't seen him really cross the ball in or anything to back that up yet. But in terms of the ball at his feet and his composure, he looks like a real talent who I'd be happy to step up into the first team over the next couple of years. And I wouldn't be surprised if towards the end of the season we do start to see him maybe included in matchday squads once we sort of know roughly where we're going to finish. There's potential there. Devon Tanton as well also played in the cup games. A very well respected player. I think he's played for the Colombian under-21s team already. Maybe even I think he got given an unofficial cap because I think the under-21s played against the first team and they sort of mixed the teams up. It was a weird little international break he had, but he's played in the league. He looked really good as well. I think he's another talent who could potentially step up as I think he can play out wide as well.
I loved what I saw in Luc de Fougerolles in the US preseason, and I was a little bit surprised that he wasn't given an opportunity to push on. If he is being thought of as a potential Castagna backup, it surprises me that he hasn't been more part of this, and that Kenny Tete, when he's come back from injury, has been preferred, if only to sit on the bench. You would have thought that if he really was the man or the sort of guy in waiting, that he would have been pushed forward a little bit more. I'd love to see that happen, and I actually think, given his size, given his composure, he looks quite skillful. That if we believe what Marco's system is, then he kind of fits the bill at right back.
I mean, I think he'd probably fit the bill across any of the back four because really all of them have to be good with their feet in Marco's system, being able to play out from the back. And having a player like that sitting in your youth team who can play. I was just having a quick look. He has played left back and right back for the under-21s and centre back and central midfield as well. So he's a bit of a utility player. He's a defensive Deco over Reed, effectively.
I was going to say Chris Baird 2.0.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of player that you want in and around your squad coming up through the youth team, and Marco can sort of mould him into what he needs from here. And you've got great players to learn from: Tim Ream, Calvin Bassey, Diop Robinson. It's a really good little defensive unit we've got at the moment. The other thing, I guess, to consider here is, are there any potential players that we move on from this group? I know there's one who sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's because he's not been at the club this year. And when he was at the club, it wasn't wonderful. In Mbabu, who his contract's up next season. Do you feel like this is the time that we cash in on him, or do you think maybe he just goes out on loan and we do a knockout Cavallero and just let his contract eventually run until he disappears?
Skibby?
I mean, personally, I think the Knockout and Cavallero piece was not chosen. I don't think anybody wanted them for the fees that we wanted to try and recoup. But for me, I think Mbabu, it's very clear that he didn't fit the bill, didn't fit the hype. And I think we'll try and cash in on him. But I don't think he's having the most, not what I've read anyway, having the most storming of seasons. He... so that brings the value a little bit down again. So the only way I can see him being loaned out again to run out his contract is if there is no interest. But I think that's basically where we're at. He's listed. He's ready to go. But whether anyone actually wants him is another question.
Please take him, someone.
I like how we haven't discussed Tim Ream at all yet, and just how we just. Because I love Tim Ream, and we're talking very rationally, we're talking very logistically, and Tim Ream is probably the only one in both lists where everything just flies out the window, and I just think purely with my heart, I want Tim Ream to stay until his knees don't work anymore, and just give him think your extensions.
On that, Sammy, I think Tim Ream's the easiest one of this group. His contract, he's contracted through to 2025.
Yeah,
we obviously keep him. We're not selling him. If he's still useful to us, and it does make him sound like a bit of a pawn, but if he's still useful to us next season, you extend him for another year, and I think he's more than happy with that. I can't see Tim Ream going off and playing a lower level of football. He might want to go to the MLS and do something there, but.
He's said on record. He said on record that he has no interest in MLS, and he'll literally be at Fulham until basically we decide we don't want him anymore, which I love.
And he's also said that he doesn't want to get into coaching. I know there was some chat about Tim Ream being a potential assistant manager now that Boa Morte is going, but he has gone on record and also said that he doesn't want to be a coach and wants to spend more time with his family when he's done with football. So I think Ream for me it's a really simple keep him for next season. We're not going to be cashing in on him. I'd say he'd be happy on a month-to-month rolling contract realistically, because I don't think he's really expecting to play. I think he's such a good team player that he just wants to be there for Fulham to help if we ever need him. And that's exactly what you want from an older head in the group. I guess the only other conversations here is anything happening with Diop. Do we see him going around another year? And Anthony Robinson, what is the likelihood of him actually going out and being bought by another team?
Well, can we just finish on Mbabu? Surely he goes, right? We don't.
Yeah, I think
he doesn't fit the bill. He doesn't have the skill level. That was a massive fail. As a sign.
And I just had a look at his stats for Augsburg this season. He's getting a 6.73 rating on Who Scored, which isn't terrible. He's got a man of the match this year. He's got a couple of assists. I think there's the potential to pick up some money for him. I don't think it'll be a huge amount, but it'll be something in the pocket, hopefully, to of recoup with FFP and stuff. But yeah, Mbabu for me is a definite out. I'd be getting rid of him as soon as possible.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's be a little kinder than that. He's a man. He's a
human
being. Sure.
I'm
sure he's a very nice man. He looks like a very nice man. Diop. Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? I've gone through periods where I've been very grateful to have Diop, and I thought for parts of last season he was really, really good, really, really good, and with Tosin finding form and probably improving somewhat, he just looks like a different level to Diop. Tosin reads the game better than Diop. Diop's not a terrible footballer by any means, but he has made a few mistakes, and it's just I just don't think it's the same level. He's by no means out the door for me. He's still a really good option to have, but he's and in another world, if he has another great run of form, maybe he can be, um, a very, very strong challenger for that rotational, right centre back. But I think he can still do a job for us.
I like Diop in the sense that I think after his contract runs out, unless he has a wild U-turn of form, I can't see us. I think we would probably let that contract run out. But I like him in the side just for the sake of numbers. He's a steady pair of hands. I find him kind of inoffensive. I don't fret when he comes on. I'm also not overly excited when I see him. That he just makes me feel safe. He's just a big tree, and I like that in my centre backs.
I think the only worrying thing about Diop is he left West Ham because he wasn't getting the game time. And if he's now not getting the game time again, is he now going to start getting itchy feet and start to leave? And that's where we kind of force our hand to replace him, I think. But I mean, West Ham fans, they warned me. I was quite excited when Diop joined, but they said he'll have an absolute stormer. But for every stormer he has, he'll have 3 games where he'll look completely out of place and lost. And he does seem to fit that bill. He is Mr. Inconsistent, where you think, I think early on, sort of last season, I was thinking, oh yeah, we found our sort of centre back. He's a rock, and then he'll just dally on the ball, lose it, or do something really silly, and he almost just doesn't have the concentration for a professional footballer. It's just there is a player there. He just seems to sort of get lost in his own thoughts and go, oh, sorry, the attackers just nicked the ball off me.
The back pass was that against Brentford.
Oh God, yeah, and it's just
just those moments. So you're right. He does seem to switch off a bit, and it's interesting because I think Tosin was that player last season, or maybe the season before, and Tosin's managed to turn that round a lot. Where we're not seeing the same silly mistakes that we now kind of see from Diop occasionally. And I think we sort of all agree that we should be doing what we can to keep Tosin because he doesn't make those mistakes anymore. Now, on to Robinson. Do we see big clubs realistically coming in from him? I know he's been having a couple of good games. There's a lot of things flying around at the moment. He set the record for the most assists by an American in the Premier League with the assist for Muniz on the weekend. He's been having a great season. I think on Who's Scored, he's the highest rated left back in the Premier League this year. Do we realistically see big clubs coming in for him, or do we think this is just one of those sort of flash in the pans?
This is a really interesting question. You're gonna love this. I was watching a Tifo video about this the other day, but genuinely, that's an old joke, Skitty. If he does go, genuinely, where does he go? Because unless I think he kind of has justified for the big money move. But until there is really, really clear defined interests akin to when Bayern Munich were sniffing around Polina, I don't actually know where he goes because he's probably going to have to go for roughly about 50, 60 mil at this stage. Is that fair? Is that a fair price?
Absolutely.
About that?
Yeah. I think realistically it'll be 40, but probably about that.
And he'll have to probably go to a top 6 name whatever league. But it would realistically have to be a top 6 in a competitive league. I can't at this stage see who's putting up the money for that. I'm sure there probably will be, but until I know who that is, I'm not sure if he's gonna leave.
Look, he's an interesting one. I remember when he was starting to really show his skill and talent. I was always I suppose, a bit sniffy about the fact that it was very one-sided, and problem with end product, crossing the ball wasn't that great. But geez, he's come on, hasn't he? And
Yeah.
I think he seems more, I don't know what the right word is, but kind of he's actually more tenacious and engaged, and he's got more attacking oomph to him than he had. He's very up for it. And no greater example of that against Tottenham. It was incredible. And but still, could you imagine him being a player at Arsenal or Liverpool?
Well,
doing
I
that?
was just going to run through the sort of big teams that he could potentially go to, because I don't think he's going to go to a West Ham or a
No.
Brighton, realistically. Liverpool have Andy Robertson, Tottenham, Destiny Udogie, Man City, Josko Gvardiol, Arsenal have Zinchenko, Man U have Luke Shaw. I mean, if we're talking money, Chelsea have Ben Chilwell. Like, these are, international top standard left backs. I personally think Robinson is up there with those guys, but is he going to replace those guys?
That's
I'm not
the
100% sure.
I don't think he does. I
Yeah.
don't think he
You
does.
said,
And
you
I
said a
guess
name
it's-
there
it's-
who I think you would. And
Oh,
that
who?
for me was Zinchenko.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe.
Zinchenko potentially.
I don't rate
Zinchenko's been
Zinchenko
good
at
at
all.
Arsenal. I don't either. I think he's a weak point for them. But I think Arsenal quite like him. They've also got Kivior as well, who can play left back.
Different type of player, isn't it?
It
I
is
think-
100%. But again, does that mean Arsenal wouldn't sign someone like Robinson because they play in a style that doesn't sort of require that bombing left back going forward? I think it works really well for a team like Fulham, who can hit teams on the break. To have someone super speedy who can overlap. I think how often do you see Man City on the counter overlap with their fullbacks overlapping? It just doesn't really happen for those high quality teams.
Absolutely the point. I think Fulham's got a number of these players. João Palhinha is one of those guys.
Yes.
Where
100%.
the value we actually have in João Palhinha for what he does for us is far in excess, in my head, of what his open market value is. And I reckon Robinson's the same. I think what we get from him, and what that value is to us, and what we might have to spend to replace him to get a better product, is there's a disconnect or a delta there to the market that I think is kind of unique to a team like us.
But it's part of a wider conversation, though, of these really elite level players actually having less opportunities than you might think. Because, I mean, Harry Kane was a really good example of this. Harry Kane wanted to leave Tottenham, but he's actually had very, very few places he could actually go. I mean, obviously, he can go anywhere. But you have to find an elite club that's going to be playing Champions League football who are in need of a replacement striker who will be there out and out. He is the number one person. And the better you get, it's kind of counterintuitive, but the better you get and the more elite you actually become. And I do think Robinson is actually pushing that level. Your places that you can actually go to are a lot more limited, and then you also have to have space for them. So that's where I'm like, I don't know where he's actually going to fit in,
Yeah, I think for me, and I'm kind of on the motion that he could be in that top 6 team. And the reason I think that is because he's not known for his cross-blocking stats or his tackling stats. His biggest stat is interceptions. And I think that's kind of key. Like, to be able to sort of nip in front of players and start those attacking moves is very key for any side, regardless on whether you're, pushing for the title or chasing relegation. And I think for him, the point or the attributes that Robinson's potentially missing, which we don't see too much of, is probably his sort of passing and that ability to sort of create a chance from the final ball. Yeah, fair enough. He created it against Spurs, and that's great. But I think that's definitely his weakest. But I think that can be coached. And with an Arteta or a Guardiola, like, they could get the best out of him. I mean, there is an asset there of someone who is a great athlete, very quick, and and can run up that ring up and down all day. But just to sort of coach the technique, I don't think is a small ask for them. But I mean, it's a big risk. Don't get me wrong. I think there is a potential for it to backfire if he can't quite grasp, the Guardiola or Arteta way of passing, for example. That's a huge risk. But do I think that's beyond him? I don't think so. And to be honest, I mentioned Zinchenko, and I can see him fitting that Arsenal team quite well if he can up that sort of little technique that potentially he needs to step up from a Fulham to an Arsenal.
The other benefit I'd say that we probably have on our side for keeping someone like Robinson is there are some, I call them fashionable left backs floating around the Premier League who might be a better option for some of those top 6 clubs. Rico Henry at Brentford, Tariq Mitchell at Palace, Lewis Hall at Newcastle, Tyrell Malacia at Man United. These are young left backs who are, 2-3 years younger than Anthony Robinson, who have a higher market transfer value than Robinson does, but probably have as much potential and potentially maybe fit systems a little bit better and are just, more fashionable names. If you sign someone like Tariq Mitchell off Palace, he is possibly going to be the next England left back. That's the kind of thing that you want to do when you sign players like that is sell shirts with Tariq Mitchell on the back. How many people really, how many American players have done really well at top 6 clubs? I can't think of any. Tim Howard, maybe.
Pulisic.
Pulisic, he wasn't respected because he was American. He never really got the plaudits, I think, and you see him go off to Italy and do great things over there, and Chelsea are like, why did we let this bloke go? Because he can actually do it elsewhere. I feel like Anthony Robinson might not be the fashionable option because he's seen as one-dimensional. He's seen as just pure pace. He isn't that, but that's what I think people see when they look at someone like Robinson. And so maybe on the face of it, it's better to go with a Tariq Mitchell or a Rico Henry if you're one of those big 6 clubs looking for a left back, or go to the continent and find someone else. But I'm hopeful we keep Robinson. It would take a big amount of money for me to be happy for him to move on, because I think he'd be very hard to replace in the system that we play. I assume we're all fairly on the same page there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, guys, we've managed to talk for a very long time about defenders, which is not something I thought I'd say very often. Before we wrap up part 1 of this, we'll come back with part 2 later in the week, maybe sometime next week. We will definitely let people know when that comes out. But before we do that, I'd like to talk about a little bit of current Fulham news. Luis Boa Morte, he's accepted the managerial role at Guinea-Bissau. He's going to be leaving at the end of the season. I just wanted to highlight what Boa means to Fulham. Skibby, I know I think we're roughly of the same generation, started supporting Fulham around the same time, and Boa was a big part of my childhood supporting Fulham, 100%. And that team and that kit that I've got him wearing here with the one black sleeve is iconic Boa. How much does Boa mean to Fulham, and how big a loss do you think this is going to be?
Oh, he was huge. I mean, even in sort of the Tigana days, he was just kind of just that blistering pace down the left. You just knew something was going to happen whenever he got on the ball, which absolutely, he would always bring you to the sort of the front of your seat. And I think we've always loved that, to a point where sort of like the kit he's wearing, the dabs.com shirt. Like, I remember, I think, was it that year that he was given the captaincy, that he was just that kind of figurehead to have around the club, which I think just speaks volumes in terms of who he is, and just that kind of person to be able to sort of rally a team. And I think he is going to be a huge loss. And I have to admit, when he first came in, I thought it was a bit of a gimmick, just to be an assistant manager behind Marco. Instantly, you're behind Marco and his team because, Boa's there. And if Boa says it's all right, well, it's all right with me, kind of thing. But I mean, I think he's shown that he has matured a little bit. I mean, he was always a bit of a hothead. I think he's picked up only a couple of yellow cards, but from the sidelines. But he's massive to have around the club. Kind of breathes kind of fresh air in part of that, Portuguese speaking contingent that we've built at the club. And I think it's going to be a big loss for us. And who's coming in is going to be a massive question mark for me. But I think for Boa, it's a great opportunity for him, for his coaching career. And potentially, does that mean that sooner or rather than later, we might see, Boa come back as a manager, as a gets more experience under his belt and comes back to Fulham as the head coach, potentially. But it's going to be a big miss. And he's just great to have on the team as well. Because, I mean, even before games, everyone's singing the Luis Boa Morte song. Even now, he's just assistant manager. I mean, that's what I think is how many other clubs sing about their assistant manager. I think that's what kind of speaks volumes for us. So he's going to be a huge miss.
I couldn't agree more. I think he was obviously an incredible player for Fulham, exciting, passionate. And as you say, most assistant managers are very much the understudy, very much in the background. Are just sort of like, walking like Prince Philip behind the monarch. And you figure that Boa Morte is very respected by Silva, and he's absolutely in the front row. And I think Jack made the call a few weeks ago. It's great to see that he's now been elected to take the yellow cards when we get pissed off with the fourth.
He made Marco sit down at one point to argue with the fourth official because he's like, "No, I'll cop this yellow card.
I'll do
Let me harass."
Yeah. I bet he's absolutely loved and highly respected by the players because he could do it. He says he's not just a bloke who played fourth division, but has actually got some tactical nous. He could do it. And I think that counts for a lot. This is a sore loss. All power and good luck to the guy. He really deserves his opportunity. And as I said on the private chat, is there a politician who runs for office who doesn't want to be prime minister? Come on. He surely deserves a crack at the top job somewhere. But it's no small thing that he's a Portuguese-speaking man as part of the team here. We've got a lot of Portuguese players, and they're not just Portuguese players in our squad. They're key players. They're really key players. And so to actually be able to communicate clearly, not that those guys can't speak English, but to be able to really communicate in a mother tongue with these guys is no small part of it. And I look forward with great intrigue to see who Marco goes for. I don't think it's going to be someone from England. Not a chance. I'm sure it's going to be someone out of his network in Portugal or Brazil, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So assistant manager of Fluminense, so we can get the flow going.
It's actually a really. We talked a lot about endings, and this is a really, really nice one. I feel that this is genuinely an acknowledgement of a really, really fabulous job that he's done, and I think him and Margot have just been such a great pair, and they've really, really given us so much over the past couple of years that they've been there, and they've really, really felt like a team. It's always felt like Marco and Boa, and that's really, really nice. I mean, you see like former players like John Terry knocking around, and it doesn't really feel like they're part of a team. It just kind of feels like they're just there. Whereas I feel that Boa and Silva really, really have something. And yeah, this just kind of feels like Boa, you can do this now. And yeah, just best of luck to you. I want to see you back soon.
I think one of the things I liked most about the whole situation with Boa joining the club was he went and became Marco's assistant manager when Marco was at Everton. So he hasn't come back just to Fulham. He actually came for Marco, to be an assistant manager for Marco. And then the fact that Marco comes to Fulham and Boa just comes with him just made the whole Marco Silva to Fulham thing even more special. And like you say, it's I just love seeing him on the bench every week. And I feel like I'm getting to the age now where I look at teams' benches and notice coaches who were definitely players from when I was a kid. And you see it more and more. But just seeing Boa there sitting behind the iPad on the stand, tapping away and pointing at things. And it just brings this sense of joy knowing that a Fulham legend is sat there, and it's not just a random team of blokes who've rocked up to take over and get their paycheck and do their job. This is someone who has a real link to Fulham over, I think he joined in 2000 it must be before that. When did he join Fulham?
I think it's 2001.
2001 season.
Yeah.
So he's been affiliated with Fulham now for 24 years on and off. I know once he retired, he started working in the academy and then went off to Sporting and has been coaching around the place after that. But the fact that he's had such a long relationship with Fulham makes it even more special. And I think everyone is devastated by the news that he's leaving, but at the same time wishes him the best in what is obviously quite a big step for his career. To take an international job, any international job, is a huge step. And Guinea-Bissau, well, it might not seem like the biggest job in the world. You play against huge African teams constantly. You get to play in the African Cup of Nations. And I really hope he does well and get some experience under his belt. And like you say, maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, he finds himself back at Fulham as the manager, which I think would just be a great way to do it. Imagine 30 years affiliated with Fulham and you finally come back to be manager after being a player. That's Chris Coleman-esque. It's what you want to see. Yeah, I mean, all the best to Boa. I really hope he's really successful, and I think we're all going to be Guinea-Bissau fans from now on.
Absolutely.
Is it possible? I've no idea if this is true, but it just might be that Boa being part, he's very close to Silva. They go on holiday together. Is it possible that Boa was actually instrumental in even joining the dots to get Silva to consider the Fulham job?
Oh, I'm sure he would have been.
Yeah.
I'm sure when Marco, because Marco takes his team around with him of Portuguese guys. I'm sure when it popped up that Fulham have come in for me, one of the first people he would have called would have been Boa and said, "What do you reckon?" And Boa, I'm sure, would have given it the thumbs up. And maybe that's a big reason why Marco stayed through a couple of shaky little periods at Fulham when it might have been easier to leave. And maybe it's Boa going, it's a good place to be, just stick it out. I think we can do some good things here. And it's hard to say, these are behind closed doors conversations, but I don't think you can underestimate the impact of someone like Boa around the ground with the players. There's staff who've been at Fulham for as long as Boa's been affiliated with the club. And it would definitely be a really positive thing to having Boa around the club. And I think we will definitely miss that. So maybe we need to look at bringing Steve Malbronk back as assistant manager, if anyone can actually find him. But yeah, a real shame that we see Boa go, but I think we all wish him the best of luck in his new endeavours with Guinea-Bissau. And like I said, we'll definitely be following along closely. Guys, I think we can definitely wrap it up. It's a long one, but it's an important one to talk through all of this. And hopefully everyone has their own opinions on these and do get involved and comment along if you disagree or agree with us. But let's wrap it up there. Skibby, thanks for your time today.
No, thank you for having me.
Dad, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Good chat. Enjoyed it.
Sammy, off to bed with you?
Definitely. It's almost 1 a.m. Thank you for having me. No longer outros.
Worth it. Geez, we need to keep you up to 1 a.m. more often. Keeps the outros short. So thank you again to everyone who's joined along on the live stream and everyone who listens along regularly. And as always, come on, you whites.